Pertinacity. Pertinacity. It's backwards. Pertinacity. Pertinacity. Okay. Oh, pertinacity. Okay. Joan's heart was overflowing with the joys and enthusiasm of war, and it made her impatient to hear such talk. She cried out, "Bastard, bastard, will you play always with the English? Now verily I will tell you, we will not budge until this place is ours. We will carry it by storm. Sound the charge." Ah, my general. Waste no more time, man. Let the bugle sound the assault. And we saw the strange, deep light in her eyes, which we named the battle light, and learned to know so well in later fields. The martial notes pealed out, the troops answered with a yell, and down they came again, that formidable work whose outlines were lost in its own cannon smoke, and whose sides were spouting flame and thunder. We suffered repulse after repulse, but Joan was here and there and everywhere encouraging the men, and she kept them to their work. During 3 hours the tide ebbed and flowed and flowed and ebbed, but at last La Haye was now come, made a final and resistless charge, and the Bastille St. Luc was ours. Okay, right on. As to that, how can you tell? They wear the livery of God. Okay. We marched back to the city with our crop of cannon and prisoners on view, and our banners displayed. It was the first substantial bit of war work that imprisoned people had seen in 7 months that the siege had endured, the first chance they had to rejoice over a French exploit. You may guess that they made good use of it. They and the bells went mad. Joan was their darling now, and the press of people struggling and shouldering each other to get a glimpse of her was so great that we could hardly push our way through the streets at all. Her new name had gone all about and was on everybody's lips. The Holy Maid of Vaucouleurs was a forgotten title. The city had claimed her for its own, and she was the Maid of Orleans now. It is a happiness to me to remember that I heard that name the first time it was ever uttered. Between that first utterance and the last time it was uttered on earth, think how many moldering ages will lie in their gap. The Boucher family welcomed her back as if she had been a child of the house and saved from death against all hope or probability. They chided her for going into the battle and exposing herself to danger during all those hours. They could not realize that she had meant to carry her warriorship so far, and asked her if it had really been her purpose to go right into the turmoil of the fight, or hadn't she got swept into it by accident in the rush of the troops? They begged her to be more careful another time. It was good advice, maybe, but it fell upon pretty unfruitful soil. Chapter XIX. Being worn out with the long fight, we all slept the rest of the afternoon away and 2 or 3 hours into the night. Then we got up refreshed and had supper. As for me, I could have been willing to let the matter of the ghost drop, and the others were of like mind, no doubt, for they talked diligently of the battle and said nothing of that other thing. And indeed it was fine and stirring to hear the paladin rehearse his deeds and see him pile his dead, 15 here, 18 there, and 35 yonder. But this only postponed the trouble. He could not do more. He could not go on forever. When he carried the Bastille by assault and eaten up the garrison, there was nothing for it but to stop, unless Catherine Boucher would give him a new start and have it all done over again. We hoped she would this time, but she was otherwise minded. As soon as there was a good opening and a fair chance, she brought up her unwelcome subject, and we faced it in the best way we could. We followed her and her parents to the haunted room at 11 o'clock, with candles and also with torches to place in the sockets on the walls. It was a big house with very thick walls, and this room was in the remote part of it, which had been left unoccupied for nobody knew how many years because of its evil repute. This was a large room, like a salon, had a big table in it, and enduring oak and well preserved, but the chairs were worn, worm-eaten, and the tapestry on the walls were rotten and discolored by age. Dusty cobwebs under the ceiling had the look of not having had any business for a century. Catherine said, "Tradition said that these ghosts have never been seen. They have merely been heard. It is plain that this room was once larger than it is now, and that the wall in its inn was built in some bygone time to make and fence off a narrow room there. There is no communication anywhere with that narrow room, and if it exists, and of that there is no reasonable doubt, it has no light and no air, but is an absolute dungeon. Wait where you are and take note of what happens." That was all. Then she and her parents left us. When their footfalls had died out in the distance down the empty stone corridor, an uncanny silence and solemnity ensued, which was dismaler to me than the night march past the Bastilles. We sat looking vacantly at each other, and it was easy to see that no one was comfortable. The longer we sat so, the more deadly still the stillness got to be, and when the wind began to moan around the house presently, it made me sick and miserable, and I wish I had been brave enough to be a coward this time. For indeed it is no proper shame to be afraid of ghosts, seeing how helpless the living are in their hands. And then these ghosts were invisible, which made the matter the worse, as it seemed to me. They might be in the room with us at that moment. We could not know. I felt airy touches on my shoulders and on my hair, and I shrank from them and cringed, and was not ashamed to show this fear, for I saw the others doing the like, and knew that they were feeling the faint contacts too. As this went on, oh, eternities, it seemed, the time dragged so drearily, all these faces became as wax, and I seemed sitting with a congress of the dead. At last, faint and fair and weird and slow, came boom, 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 a distant bell tolling midnight. When the last stroke died, that depressing stillness followed again, and as before, I was staring at those waxen faces and feeling those airy touches on my hair and my shoulders once more. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes of this. Then we heard a long, deep groan, and everybody sprang up and stood with his legs quaking, and came from that little dungeon. There was a pause, and we heard a muffled sobbing mixed with a pitiful ejaculations. There was a second voice, low and not distinct, and one seemed trying to comfort the other. And so the voices went on with moanings and soft sobbings, and the tones were so full of compassion and sorrow and despair. Indeed, it made one's heart soar to hear it. But those sounds were so real and so human and so moving that the idea of ghosts passed straight out of our minds. And so Jean de Metz spoke out and said, "Counsel, we will smash this wall and set those poor captives free. Here, with your axe." The dwarf jumped forward, swinging his great axe with both hands, and others sprang for the torches and brought them. Bang, wang, slam, smash went the ancient bricks, and there was a hole an ox could pass through. We plunged within and held up the torches. Nothing there but vacancy. On the floor lay a rusty sword and a rotten fan. Now you know all that I know. Take the pathetic relics and weave about them the romance of the dungeon's long vanished inmates as best you can. Of course, the dog starts at the door.